During this session, we'll highlight ways to safely store, secure, and transport pesticides. We'll begin with a general question about pesticide storage and security. What are the benefits of a good storage area? A good storage area will prevent damage to pesticides from extreme temperatures and weather. It safeguards against theft, vandalism, and unauthorized use. It protects people, animals, and the environment from exposure and contamination. And it reduces the likelihood of liability should something happen as a result of a pesticide exposure, contamination, or fire. Take a moment to look at these three pesticide storage areas. Which one looks most like your storage area? On the left, we have a maintenance storage room, such as you might see at a school or a hotel. The middle picture shows the door to a storage area at a farm or shop maintenance yard. The picture on the far right shows a locked box in a truck bed, which is how pesticide handlers who work for landscaping companies, forestry, or park services might transport and store pesticides. You must also secure the storage area from unauthorized entry by equipping its entrance or access with a lock. Conspicuously post a sign with the words pesticide storage area and danger or poison. Make sure these signs are posted at the entrance or access to a storage area. If you're storing pesticides in the vehicle storage area, post in that area as well. You saw this door earlier. It was the pesticide storage area at a resort. It was in an area not open to the general public and was locked. However, it didn't have a chemical or pesticide storage sign on the door. This is a simple fix, and signs are very easy to find. Two companies that sell pesticide storage area signs are Gimpler's and Granger. If you find you're missing a storage sign, you should be able to get one quickly. These are the requirements in Kentucky for pesticide storage areas. In or immediately adjacent to the storage area, including vehicles, storage areas must be of sufficient size to store pesticides in designated areas. Storage sites shall be cool, dry, and airy, or have a ventilation system installed to reduce concentrations of toxic fumes and to regulate temperatures and moisture. Storage sites shall be adequately lighted so that labels and label information can be easily read. This is especially important for people who work in early morning or evening hours when it's dark. Floor sweep compound of clay, sand, sawdust, hydrated lime, or similar materials should be kept on hand to absorb spills or leaks. The contaminated material should be disposed of per label instructions. Restricted use pesticides should be located in designated and segregated areas apart from general use pesticides. These segregated areas may remain open if the entire storage area is locked, while authorized personnel cannot control access to the area. Entrance to these segregated areas shall be plainly labeled on the outside with signs containing the words pesticide storage area and danger or poison. So help me out with my checklist. Do I have everything I need outside of my storage area? Do I have the correct pesticide storage signs? Yes. As I click, you'll see the pesticide storage area sign circled in pink. Are there locking doors? We'll put a star here because you can see from the hinges that there are indeed doors, and we'll assume that they do lock. What about lighting? Yes, we definitely have sufficient lighting for the area. You'll notice the two fluorescent light strips up top. What about emergency numbers? Yes, they're posted right here on the side of the building and near the eye wash station, a perfect place. Next on our checklist, copies of labels and SDS. I don't see any SDS outside the storage area. They might have them inside storage and backup copies in the office. However, for this checklist activity, we're going to place an SDS binder outside near the emergency numbers for safety and convenience. Do we have water, soap, and towels? Now they do have a sink, which is great. However, we'll help them out by adding a towel dispenser and soap. These two items tend to run out quickly, but they do need to be readily available. Is there a fire extinguisher? In the next presentation, we'll talk about the benefit of locating the fire extinguisher outside the storage area as opposed to inside. For now, let's add one outside, and we'll expand upon this during the emergency and incident response session. I think a good place to put it would be next to the door so it's easy to grab. The last item on our checklist is a spill cleanup kit. Do you see one of these in the photo? They have a really big one over here underneath the sink. Well, it looks like the outside of this storage area is all set and it wasn't missing too many items. You might have seen photos of the model perfect pesticide storage area. It's always spacious and spotless, very high end. Unfortunately, not every site has the money, space, or location to replicate the model. In fact, many operations don't use enough pesticides to warrant investing in a large storage space. Maybe you work at a school or resort. You could be provided with a maintenance closet to store the small quantities of pesticides and cleaning supplies that you do use. You might have a smaller farming operation with an existing shed that you can fix up to store your pesticide products. Or perhaps you're sharing a space at an ag experiment station with several other researchers and you've been provided with a small locked cage for the pesticides in your trials. This is reality, so let's talk about some features to organize your storage area so it's manageable, in compliance, and safe. Let's join this pesticide inspector as he steps inside a pesticide storage area. As you notice, this isn't a huge storage area, but there are several specific features, characteristics, and items he'll review. Here are a few significant things. Sufficient lighting to see where you're walking and the products you're grabbing. Adequate ventilation and temperature to keep pesticides from degrading. A door with a lock to secure the area from people not authorized to enter. Dry products stored above liquids. Metal shelving and/or bins underneath containers to catch leaks and spills. Catch bins are a great idea for sites with wooden shelves or shelving with grates or holes. Heavier boxes and containers stored low but not stacked too high so they're more manageable. You don't want them stored or stacked too high because you might lose your balance when grabbing them. I know there was a study guide practice exam question that threw people off about the large metal containers on the floor leading to rust. The point of that question pertained to the possibility of flooding in the storage area. To prevent rust, you could set the containers on catch bins or trays to lift them up a bit from the floor. On that note, an impervious floor is also important. Pesticide leaks or spills on a dirt or cracked asphalt floor have the potential to contaminate the environment. The whole shed should be organized and orderly, easy to enter, and a clear path to walk through, free of flammable materials like gas cans, food containers, and PPE. And it should have properly labeled containers in good condition, including service containers, which is a perfect segue into our next topic. They have their dry products stored above the liquids. If you have liquids stored above dry products, they might spill and ruin or activate the dry products. To catch any spills, they also have bins underneath the dry products. The heavy boxes and containers are stored low. They do have sufficient lighting and ventilation, as well as secured and locked doors. Underneath the door, you can see there's a step down. This and the impervious floor will prevent any spills from seeping out underneath the door or into the ground. If you look at the third shelf, you'll see service containers. Continuing on with state regulations for pesticide container condition, store a pesticide in a closed container that's free from corrosion, leakage, or pesticide contamination on the outside of the container, and make sure it's properly labeled. If the label on the container becomes lost or damaged, attach a specimen label to the pesticide container. Replace a damaged container, other than a fumigant container, with an identically labeled container or a properly labeled service container. This is a great temporary solution to prevent pesticides in leaking containers from spreading out further. You can also transfer the pesticide to a labeled service container or another container with the same product. Sometimes the container is still in perfect shape, but the label has been damaged. Take a very close look at this label. What do you notice? It looks like there are several torn and missing pages. How could this happen? The label is curled, which could be due to extreme heat or moisture in the storage area, or simply grabbing the container and or accidentally pulling too hard on the label when trying to open it. Can you continue to use the pesticide? Yes. As long as the pesticide is still in good condition, you can continue to use it. But what do you do if you can't follow a label because it's damaged? If you still have a legible label portion of the label with the EPA registration number and the manufacturer's name and phone number, you can request a copy of the label or a website where you can download a copy of the full label. This will enable you to continue to use the product according to label instructions. The environment both inside and outside the storage area can greatly impact the pesticide in their containers. We'll now focus on how weather and extreme temperatures can affect your stored products. Depending on where you live, it might be difficult to maintain a perfect climate inside the storage area. If so, you can consider buying just the amount you need to get through the season. As you'll see on this slide, extreme weather and temperatures can negatively impact pesticides and pesticide containers. In extreme cold, containers can crack and leak. A product's ingredients, both active and inert, can separate, and pesticides can crystallize or coagulate. In extreme heat, pesticides could expand and cause buildup or pressure in the container, leading to leaks. Plastic containers might melt or become brittle, and that may cause an explosion or fire. During flooding and humidity, metal containers can rust. Paper and cardboard can split or crumble. Labels might peel, smear, and become difficult to read. And dry pesticides could clump, degrade, or dissolve. Severe wind might cause damage to the roof or the sides of the storage structure. Structure damage could make pesticides susceptible to heat, dust, and humidity, and pesticides might then fall off the shelves, tip over, and spill. What's the optimal temperature range? That's a great question. Google searches resulted in a few different answers. Luckily, the suggestion to store above 40 degrees Fahrenheit is consistent, but there is some variation in the maximum temperature. Some said 95, others 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Use a temperature range that conforms with all of the pesticides being stored. Now we come back to the importance of reading the label and safety data sheets, or SDSs. You can find storage temperature ranges, precautions about storing the pesticide near certain items, flammability, disposal, spill cleanup, and specific instructions for firefighters and other hazard response teams on the SDS. Each pesticide is different. If you look closely at this one, you'll notice the temperature range was listed in Celsius and not Fahrenheit. When in doubt, you can always contact the manufacturer for guidance. It is possible this particular SDS represents a product registered for use in Canada. The pesticide manufacturer or your pesticide dealer can provide you with the correct SDS representing the product you plan to use. Fred Fischel of the Missouri Pesticide Safety Education Program has a great website highlighting temperature effects on stored pesticides. Here are just a couple of lists from his site. These two lists support the idea that each pesticide is different. Most likely, you have one storage area, but several pesticides with different storage requirements, making it tricky. A suggestion for those of you who have a storage area with limitations, such as no electrical air conditioning or heating, purchase the amount you use just for the season, so you aren't storing pesticides that are impacted by heat, cold, etc. Here are a few interesting comparisons from Dr. Fischel's list. When in doubt, contact the manufacturer. I know that y'all probably know this, but it's always good to pass this information along to others. Do not store a pesticide in a container that was used for food, beverage, feed, drugs, or cosmetics, or which by size, shape, or marking could be confused as being a food, beverage, feed, drug, or cosmetic. Do not store pesticides in a manner through which food, beverage, feed, drugs, cosmetics, eating utensils, or tobacco products can be contaminated. Unfortunately, not everyone knows what you know now. These two photos were found on Facebook Marketplace by an Arizona structural pest control inspector. Believe it or not, the products and their dangerous packaging were for sale online. Not only is storing the pesticide in ketchup and mustard containers extremely hazardous, you'll see they staged the photo on the bathroom counter near their toothpaste. Good news, we're now in the home stretch. We're going to wrap up this presentation with tips for transporting pesticides safely. Look at how many different people transport pesticides on roads, sometimes freeways. The manufacturer and distributors ship pesticides in large quantities throughout the U.S. The employer might pick up pesticides from a dealer, or the pesticides will be delivered directly to the operation. The pesticide handler might travel with pesticides in the back of their work truck to a site, or they might drive a spray rig from the mixing and loading site out to a field that they intend to treat. They might also participate in an unusable pesticide disposal event and take a load of containers to a location off-site. You might be an excellent driver, but not everyone else is. Careless drivers can create problems for you, the pesticides you transport, and other drivers. Some pesticides are highly flammable. An accident could lead to an extremely hazardous situation for you and everyone else near the vehicle. Spilled pesticides on roadways could also expose people to the pesticide, contaminate the area, lead to other accidents, legal action, and financial loss. Anything spilled in one area could certainly be spread to a larger surface as other vehicles drive through. This is the main reason the Department of Transportation requires vehicles to be placarded when transporting certain types and quantities of hazardous materials. It's extremely important and helpful to first responders to be able to identify the potential hazards immediately so that they can respond correctly using the appropriate materials. Pesticide loads that require placarding are those that bear a DOT poison label, are in containers larger than 119 gallons, and contain quantities greater than 1,000 pounds. Hazardous materials include some pesticides and fertilizers, such as anhydrous ammonia or ammonium nitrate, and fuels such as gasoline, diesel, and propane. The distributors will give you placards to place on your vehicle. If you ship or transport materials in quantities requiring placards, you must also have a transportation security plan that includes measures to prevent unauthorized access, a security check of employees who pick up and or transport materials, and your intended route of travel. You can prevent some hazards by making sure your work vehicle is in good operating condition before you transport pesticides. Also, check the containers and application equipment you'll be transporting to make sure they're tightly closed and not leaking. Additional safety measures include placing pesticides in the cargo area as opposed to the passenger compartment, securing all pesticide containers in the cargo area and protecting them from rain and other potential damage. Never transport food, animal feed, or clothing in the same compartment with pesticides, and never leave pesticides unattended. Enclosed boxes are best for keeping pesticides secure in a vehicle, but they might not be practical. For example, do items tend to tip over inside? Is the lockbox used to secure other items? Would an enclosed box be problematic for people who might not be physically able to reach into the box and or climb up into the truck bed to grab the pesticide containers? Truck beds are convenient, but remember, never stack higher than the side of the vehicle. Secure containers and tanks. Check for nails, stones, and sharp edges. Steel beds are easier to clean than wood, so avoid transporting pesticides on pallets. Always ask, how accessible is the load to others? Always inspect containers before loading. Are you able to read all of the information on the containers and the labels? Are the containers tightly sealed? Are they clean so they don't contaminate the truck bed or the truck's storage box? Use tubs and liners for extra containment and easier cleanup. The less you handle containers, you reduce the likelihood of damaging the containers. Secure the load with tarps, ropes, or tie downs. Secure equipment you're transporting too. This person was participating in an unusable pesticide collection day. The great things the person did were packing a spill cleanup barrel and placing old contaminated containers in bags. It's probable the load had been rearranged as items were collected. However, let's imagine, just for discussion purposes, the person loaded their truck like this and traveled to the collection event. How stable is the load at this point? What if they had to drive down a typical farm road or even a few city streets to get to the event? What would you do differently? This person made their best attempt to secure the load. Unfortunately, due to the container age, heat, and the tightness of the plastic wrap, the pesticide oozed up and out of the container. Now there's a contaminated truck bed. The spilled pesticide could also run out the back of the truck bed. Vehicle owners and operators are held responsible for spills. They must be trained in emergency response procedures for spills and notification. Just a last point about the photo in this slide. The pallet is also contaminated. It's not only impossible to get pesticide out of wood, but sometimes people burn pallets they won't use. This is a picture of the pre-made spill cleanup kit in a duffel bag I mentioned earlier. It's a convenient way to carry your spill cleanup materials. If you have pesticides in the back of your vehicle, also carry the following: labels and SDS. Arrange the SDS information in alphabetical order to make finding the documents easier, and always include a list of emergency phone numbers.